That was EATV's Anthony Bartoway reporting. Well, it's been a very eventful 3 days in The Hague. Russia's delegation presented its case to the UN judges. Joining us now to take a closer look at the court case is EATV's Christopher Atwood. So, Chris, can you tell us more about Russia's arguments?
Yeah, so on Wednesday, even the Ukrainian delegation had to tip their hats to Russia's legal gymnastics. And we thought that they left a few details out, so we wanted to look at that. So even 12 seconds into Russia's defense, they had to rehash some old, tired myths about the Euromaidan revolution.
In February 2014, a violent coup d'etat took place in Kiev. The pretext was the decision by the Ukrainian government to suspend preparation for the signature of an association agreement with the European Union in order to explore further steps.
So false claims of a coup d'etat in Kiev are a pretty run-of-the-mill Russian talking point. But what's interesting here is the fact that they decided to gloss over what they called the pretext for the Euromaidan revolution. See, the Euromaidan revolution is also known as the Revolution of Dignity because it wasn't just about the EU association agreement. Mass protests first formed as a response to the use of force by Ukrainian police against peaceful protesters. And for what it's worth, the Russian delegation calling the revolution a, quote, violent coup d'etat requires an impressive suspension of reality. And it ignores the fact that former President Yanukovych was never in any real danger. He actually fled from Kiev before he was ousted.
Oh, that is very interesting. What else did you find out?
So the next thing was a very, very classic Kremlin talking point that they love to bring up, the annexation of Crimea.
And taking into account that the great majority of Crimeans wish to be part of Russia again, a referendum on the future of Crimea became the obvious choice for them.
So not only is this a gross oversimplification of the occupation and subsequent annexation of Crimea, they sort of left out the occupation part. Remember these guys? They were called Little Green Men, and they staged an actual coup d'etat in the Crimean parliament by forcing an emergency vote that put a fringe party in control of Crimea. The armed and often masked men were also standing around during their fig leaf referendum. Russia even honored them by creating a Russian Special Forces Day on the first anniversary of the annexation. They were awarded medals, and less than a month after the annexation, in April 2014, Russian President Vladimir Putin even admitted that the Little Green Men were actually Russian servicemen, despite initially denying it. Russia's delegation in The Hague made another really interesting assertion. This time, they were talking about how Russian-backed rebels actually got their weapons.
The primary source of weapons and ammunition to the military of the DPR and the LPR are stockpiles inherited by Ukraine in 1991 from the Soviet army that was formerly tasked to hold off the entire NATO. A lot of these stockpiles were deposited in the old mines of Donbass and later captured by rebels.
Yeah, so like I said, an interesting comment. It even made the rounds on Ukrainian social media as a meme. Now, no one can definitively say whether the Russian-backed separatists miraculously found their weapons in old coal mines. Maybe they did. But the Russian delegation left out a really important issue here. The military forces in occupied Donbass have more than 600 tanks. That's more than most European countries. It's more than Germany and France combined. That doesn't even count armored vehicles, heavy artillery, or anti-aircraft weapons. When you look on the surface, Russia's arguments seem relatively sound, but when you bring back what they left out, they fall apart pretty quickly.
So, Chris, thank you so much for the point of view and for the closer look at the Russian arguments at The Hague. That was very interesting.